So, we look like we're ready. But this is day one. It's about the work. And I've said that from day one. It'll always be the same message. It's about work. You got to go earn your right every year. It doesn't matter what the players are, the coaches, expectations, where you were, where you're going. We got to work, man.
Wants to throw it to Stewart. He caught it. He stole the first down. Oh, yes. The big man dives down to the 31-yard line. Oh, that is beautiful.
Let me tell you something. I love this team now. I got goosebumps, gentlemen. I love this team.
Fields looking, pressured, hit from behind, taken down. Aiden Hutchinson got him.
What do you think about the secondary?
Just look at the name, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You drafted Branch.
It started off with that huge hit on Beasley.
Be calling things out. There's a big hit right away. And boom!
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff dropped it in the bucket that time.
We're in our window now to win.
Aaron Rodgers exits the NFC North as a loser.
Hey, what's happening on this Sunday night there, Lions fans? Man, I got goosebumps too. I'll tell you what, I effing love this team, Dan Campbell. I'm right there with you, buddy. So what's happening, everybody? Solo mission tonight, and we're going to try to manage this stream with the chat. We'll do our best, but don't be afraid to send them in. I'd love to see what you guys have to say about this Detroit Lions roster, and especially after this last preseason game, man. It was electric for some of those young guys, man. Did they really step up in a big way? Hey, Tim, how you doing? I see the chat came in. We're doing wonderful, man. Glad you could join us tonight. Hey, before anybody goes anywhere, please do us a huge favor, which Tim probably already has done. Make sure you give us a subscribe to our Rocked On Podcast Network channel on YouTube. That's the best way you guys can support us, is just to subscribe. So maybe at some point we can get to monetization and keep bringing in more content, better content, get in some Hall of Fame players for interviews. It all costs money, and we're trying to earn our way there, trying to do it the right way. So it's the easiest way to support us. You can also, just visit our channel bio and find all of our links with the link tree. The link tree is a very uniform, custom way for us to keep everything organized. It's not some scammy or spammy, link. It just gives you everything all in one place. And, you probably wonder why it's called Rocked On Podcast Network. And it's really simple. Hey, there's another comment. I'm going to get to that one in just a second. But it's really simple. We're trying to bring this, nationally and bring in a lot more people to cover all NFL teams and an additional 100 podcasts above and beyond what we're doing right now. So if you have any aspirations and you'd like to start your own podcast, you'd like to be a writer, we have spaces. We have plenty of spots to fill. We'd love to have everybody come in. All ideas are welcome. You get your own freedom, for creativity. Do what you want. Don't forget, visit that Villain Squad store at villainsquad.store and check out our newest designs. All right, we're going to get into this show tonight, but before we do, I got one thing that I got to get off my mind here. And I want to take a moment just to kind of say something that's bigger than football, and it's bigger than any sport, and that's human life. And on Friday night, the 25th of August, while most of us were watching the Lions play or another team or at a high school football game ourselves, there was a shooting in Oklahoma, in Choctaw, Oklahoma, at a high school football game where a 16-year-old lost his life. And 4 other individuals at the game were also either shot or injured. And, I'll read kind of a brief thing here. There's a 16-year-old boy that was killed and 4 others that were injured in a shooting at the high school football game in Choctaw. The teenager, whose name won't be released, was shot on Friday night, according to a news release from the Choctaw Police Department. Authorities said that the student at either the guy that was shot, I guess, was not a student at either of the schools. The shooting happened during the third quarter, and one of the visitors, or on the visitor side of the stadium, believe it be there, just an argument started, and next thing you know, guns are drawn. So, I just want to give a moment of silence to the people that were injured, and definitely to the 16-year-old that lost his life, because this type of stuff isn't part of sports. It shouldn't be a part of life, and people need to be more responsible with what they do. And I believe I see, Justin, your question there. I believe they did catch the shooter, and they did recover 2 guns and some rounds. But I'm just going to take a quick moment of silence, and then we'll jump into the show. All right. Now, feeling sad today, because that's tough to see. It doesn't matter where it's at. Whether it's in your own hometown, your own backyard, or anywhere else, it's just tough. And we're kicking off, a hell of a season here for the Detroit Lions, and yeah, I do got the goosebumps. Like, man, Kansas City is right around the corner. We're gonna blink and it's gonna be here. So it's coming, y'all. So let's get into some of the highlights, man. This last game really brought some energy. Really brought the best out in some of these young guys. But we'll go through some highlights here. First, I'd like to say, James Houston, man. Midway through the first quarter, combined with Romeo for a sack on Bryce Young. Dorsey returned a kickoff 62 yards. Coda ran a nice skinny post off play action for 21 yards. Craig Reynolds scored a rushing TD. It was 3rd and goal. The second quarter, 5 yards out, and he squeezed in. Gilmore put the hit stick on Shi Smith early in the second quarter, and then right after that, I think it was a Chase that took the interception from Shi too. I don't know. I can't remember now. Anyway, Chase Lucas, he makes a diving interception to save a TD in the end zone. Antoine Green scored a 70-yard TD off a dagger route over the middle. It was a great throw by Teddy. One of the best throws I've seen all preseason. I mean, it looked like the guy threw it in quad coverage when you were looking at it from one angle. It was a dangerous throw, but he completed it. Turnover. So guys are winning the turnover battle. Dorsey makes initial contact on Cameron Peoples, who was rushing up the middle, knocks the ball out, recovered by Brady Breeze. And that fumble led to a Lions field goal to end the first half. And that was a total of 10 points put up in less than 2 minutes of play by the Lions to end the first half. Then Gilmore makes a phenomenal read and an interception for a TD around the 3-minute mark in the fourth quarter. The very next offensive series for Carolina, Chase Lucas laid the boomstick. That's what I was saying earlier on Shi Smith as well. So that was around the 2-minute mark, 2-minute 57 mark of that quarter. So the last 4 plays by the Lions defense, 2 sacks, an interception, and a touchdown. I mean, what does that tell you about these young guys and how they're meeting, the challenge head on, and they're really taking their game to newer heights when they were called upon, and they were called upon in a big way. They had some big shoes to fill to try to earn a spot on this roster. So let me get to some of your chat questions here, comments, and roll it all the way back here. So yeah, Tim said, how we doing tonight, fellas? It's a solo mission tonight, Tim. Let me know if I'm being a little loud, because I don't have my co-host here to tell me if I'm being loud and turn the volume down. But we're doing great, man. Doing great. Justin, take a look at you here. Obsessed Detroit Lions fan up in here in Rochester Hills, Michigan. Go Lions, win us the Super Bowl before the day I die. Yeah, well, I think that's got to happen. I mean, we can't go a whole generation without at least getting into the playoffs and making a run, right? It's got to happen. I think now's the time. And will we be facing the Carolina Panthers again in the regular season? And are we scheduled to play them? I think they're going to be helping. I think they're going to be playing over here at home. So hopefully we can win and beat them twice. Yeah, so I believe the Carolina Panthers are in week 9, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but let me pull it up. You would think by now that I would have that mounted behind me, but I don't have it yet. But we do definitely play Carolina, so we'll get that revenge game from last season because that was we got our asses kicked. Over 300 rushing yards, and they're only going to get better now that they have some of the Lions coaches on the team now. So let's see. We go Chiefs, we go Seahawks, Falcons, Lions, Packers, then the Panthers. So October 8th, Panthers will be at the Lions, Ford Field. We're going to mop the field with them again, hopefully. All right, so I'm going to keep rolling here. A few things that were pointed out or that I kind of gathered from this game was there was a few huge moments, but they were winning the turnover battle. And from a defensive production standpoint, the Lions really played a solid game with all three pieces or three components kind of working together: offense, defense, and special teams. Special teams played lights out, but the Lions are winning the turnover battle and protecting the football at the same time. The Lions defense, we're keeping the Panthers offense off the field, and defensive scores, by the Lions helped seal this Lions victory. There wasn't a minor fumble recovery by Martinez in this game, but the Lions did finish the game turnover less. So that was good to see that they protected the ball. Another comment here by Justin May. We have a Happy Gilmore on the team. That's great. I had a lot of questions about Gilmore. I mean, he's got the bloodline, but does he have the ability? And I think that he showed it to us the other night that he has the ability. And he said he went from playing golf and now he's playing for the Lions. That's funny. I'll get to the next ones here in just a few minutes here. Hatter's house. Is that Hatter's house or Hater's house? Am I saying it right? He's watching this from L.A. Hey, that's great, man. We just had one of our newest friends who's joining our network, Brian Flores. He's out in the L.A. area too, and he's now joining us periodically throughout the season, hopefully working on some things on the back end too. And so we got another L.A. guy in the house, and then we got one watching from L.A. So thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So I'm going to keep moving here. We did have one question that came in. We had a couple questions that came in over the weekend. But the first question was, defensive plays can often be overshadowed by offensive highlights. Which defensive units or players made significant contributions, during the last preseason game, and how did they impact the outcomes of this game? Well, I think we kind of went over that just a little bit as to the turnover, winning the turnover battle and how that was a paramount process to the Lions being able to win this game. I mean, the offense they were not moving the ball. They weren't really getting much going. You had the injury to Sudfeld. Martinez couldn't do anything but scramble. Teddy had a decent game, but it's nothing to write home about, right? And he's not playing with the ones. So the defense was much needed in this game to pull out a victory. Not that a win mattered, because winning in the preseason doesn't mean a damn thing. The Lions won all 4 preseason games before and then lost every single game in the regular season. So I don't really judge by the wins and the losses in the preseason, but it does play a factor into how you analyze the game, analyze the players, and how it affected the game and what they did or didn't do that affected the game. So I think it's a great question. But to put the Lions' defensive effort into perspective, the Panthers ended the first half with a punt, an interception, and a fumble, which turned into 10 points for the Detroit Lions. So, and this is all young guys. This is all second, third stringers, a lot of rookies, a lot of UDFAs. So anytime you can get off the field at halftime where you've now had the opposing offense punt, you took the ball back from them, between an interception and a fumble, and you created 10 points off of it, I don't think it gets any better than that. But then when you move into the second half, it got even more better. The Panthers had 7 offensive snaps in the second half. They punted 4 times. Gilmore secured the victory with a pick 6. In the very next series, the Lions created another turnover, recovering a fumble, and ending the game. They went 3 plays and kneeled. So to answer your question, defensive players didn't get overshadowed in this game. They were the highlight of this game. And I think that, what they did and what they were able to put on tape, not only is it going to secure them a spot potentially with the Detroit Lions, but I think a lot of these guys are going to get a hard look now from other teams. And that's because of what they just did, against the Panthers and what they've been doing throughout the preseason. They really started to come to life in this third game. The first game was kind of a wash, even though the Lions won. The second game, they really didn't do a whole lot, but they still played, well defensively in areas and definitely had spurts. But in this third game, they finally started to put all the phases together. And, if you listen to Dan Campbell enough like I do, this is exactly what he's talking about when he says that, all of the pieces have to come together at the right time and align at the right time. And you're kind of crescendoing, throughout the season. You want to be playing your best ball in December. And, of course, we need our guys to play their best ball on September 7th. And then they have, a long layoff before the next game. But they just need to keep getting better every week. Hatter's house, like Mad Hatter. So I had it right, Hatter's house. All right. The winning starts now. You're darn right it does. And finally, I think that we're going to be pleasantly surprised this season. I think the Lions are going to most likely finish top 10 in both categories or both sides of the ball. I know Andy is a hard up top 10 on this Lions defense. Excuse me. I feel like he might be right now that we've seen, some of these rookies really step up and some of these UDFAs really step up over the last 10 days. So it's going to be an exciting season, that's for sure. Let me look here. We had a couple other questions that came in. Another major point of emphasis, though, in this, the guy was saying the Lions couldn't get much going for offense, right? The defense made the plays to give the Lions more opportunities. And that's what we were missing last season is the Lions defense. Latter half of the season, they did okay. Beginning part of the season, first 8-9 weeks, you really weren't winning the turnover battles. We had a couple of games where we had spurts, but the defense wasn't able to go in and secure a stop or 2 or 3 in a row to give our offense an opportunity to go in and score some points and win the game. It was just a firefight back and forth all game long. And that's not what you want to see. You need your defense to get in there and make some stops, especially, if you've got 2 high-powered offenses going at it. It comes down to the defense. Look, guys and ladies, whoever's watching, the Lions have 8 former playoff teams on the schedule this season. So what does that tell you for the level of competition that they're going to be facing? These teams are only going to get better. Yes, undoubtedly, you'll have a couple of teams that will fall off in a big way. But there's going to be a couple of teams that go from 0 to hero. And I think the Lions are going to be one, except I really don't think they're a 0 at this point. I think they're, on a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably a 5 most of last season, and they finished probably at an 8. Nobody wanted to touch them. Nobody wanted to play them, towards the end of the season. And, here we are. The defense is finally coming around, and we've got a loaded roster, and we're going to get to that towards the latter half of the podcast here. I put out my roster projection about 2:30 in the morning after the game. You can see that at rockdownpodcastnetwork.com. That's www.rockedonpodcastnetwork.com is our blog site. I just started picking up the writing again. Hence the reason why I'm looking for more people to write, because I've got just too much going on to be able to write all the articles. But we're putting them out in phases, and I'll get back to it. But go check it out. I wanted to be first. I wanted to put out my thoughts, and I know that I'm probably wrong on a couple of them. I'm wrong on everything when it comes to this stuff every year. I mean, just about everybody is. You can never tell what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes are going to do. There's always a shocking moment. I would say 45 out of the 53 I probably have right, but there's literally 8 guys in there that you just don't know. You really just don't know. Second question that came in over the weekend. Which Lions player or players exceeded expectations? And how do you think their performance will impact making the roster? I think that this question kind of coincides with what we just covered too, and that's, a lot of these rookies in UDFA stepped up, and it wasn't just one or two. I mean, there was quite a few of them that really played their hearts out in this final, talent showcase, if you will. But I think the quick answer is Gilmore made a big leap in this game. Chase Lucas made a big leap in this game. Starling Thomas kind of took a step back. I didn't really see him get in a whole lot of action. Doesn't mean that he wasn't there. He just wasn't getting the big plays, but it doesn't mean he wasn't producing. Sometimes when a player disappears out of a game, there's good reason for it, especially being a cornerback. That means that, they're not targeting you. And if they're targeting you, there's a reason for it. So Gilmore got targeted a little bit more. Chase Lucas got targeted a little bit more. And that's why they were able to make the plays that they did. They had the opportunity. But the quick answer is, Gilmore, Lucas, Antoine Green, Chase Cota, and Dylan Drummond all had solid performances. But I feel that Gilmore and Lucas both pulled away from the rest of the field the most. And I'd say Green needed that big play to secure his spot ahead of Drummond or Cota on this roster. But let's look more, how the game itself and the individual performances all shook out. Before we get to that, let me check some more of these questions flying in here. Happy Gilmore pick 6. Yeah, it's funny how you made the relation between Happy Gilmore and Stephen Gilmore. It's hilarious. All right, I have some Detroit Lions rap songs on my YouTube channel. Check them out. One Pride and Restore the Roar. Check them out. I'm going to do another Lions rap song called Defend the Dead. You should send them to us, man. We're more than happy to include them in our stream, or somehow utilize them in our intro, outro videos, or during breaks. If you would give us the permission to use them, which I guess if they're on YouTube now, it's a little late, but let us know. Send them to us. You can send me your MP3s at info@rockdownpodcastnetwork.com. I'll definitely check out your YouTube. If you want to go ahead and plug your YouTube in the next comment, I'll throw it up, and that way people can look at it too. Send her away. So special teams. We'll start with that after I take a drink of Pepsi. I know I'm cheating on Coke, but this is all I can find today at the store. Got to keep this throat lubricated, man. After the thyroid removal surgery, it's changed things. So, special teams. First kickoff was returned by Dorsey, and he had a really nice return to start the game. 62 yards. Totally unexpected out of this kid. Green had a nice kick return after the Panther TD for 32 yards, both of which of them were probably against the first string defense, if I'm not mistaken. We definitely know that Dorsey's was. My biggest question is it just me, or is everyone on this Lions roster able to return kicks or punts? So far, Starling Thomas, Khalil Dorsey, Antoine Green, I think Gilmore had a couple. Every single one of these guys has busted a kick for more than 25 yards or a punt. And that's not easy to do in the NFL. There's a reason why they moved, the starting, line of scrimmage to the 25-yard line, from the 20. It's just not easy, to return kicks, especially with these new rules. One area of concern was the QB threat with rushing quarterbacks. And, the middle of the defense did disappear when Bryce Young, gashed the middle for 17 yards during the first quarter. And I noticed that, and I said to myself right away, oh, God, here we go again. Because last season, the first 8 games, there was about 700 rushing yards up the middle. A lot of it came from Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts. They kicked their butt quite a bit. But there was a lot of running backs that were running up the middle with ease. And when I saw that happening right away, it just made me, kind of take a step back and be like, wait a second, when we haven't fixed the most important thing that we struggled with all season long, which is protecting the middle of the field. And that's why the Lions changed the gap assignment from single gap to 1.5 gap coverage. It just didn't seem to make any sense. And like I said, it was a constant issue all last season with mobile threat, or mobile QBs. And should we be concerned, this early in the season that, the lack of attention to what hurt, the Lions the most in 2022 with opposing, running backs and quarterbacks is still a problem? Or is this just a product of the second and third stringers, kind of running around like a chicken with their head cut off and doing everything they can to make plays, and someone missed an assignment too? I'd have to go back and look more at what happened and what broke down. I didn't get a chance to look at the tape that closely, but one, we can't stop all of them. Two, there had to have been a breakdown somewhere. And three, the Lions have to limit these broken plays, or they have to limit the quarterback being able to run up the middle. And to me, it's a little bit easier said than done. But if you use any sort of an alert or a QB spy package, especially with the way the Lions have now built up the back half of their defense, and with the ability to bring in an extra defensive back now, that's where you're able to utilize the QB spy. And if the Lions don't utilize it, I would be really surprised, because I feel like it's something that should have been installed last season and used a lot more frequently in games against the Eagles or the Bears. And when you take a look at our schedule, which we're going to do in our next shows, we're going to go through the schedule one by one and kind of break down, are we going to win? Are we going to lose? What are the key factors to each game? And we're going to do that after roster cuts and before the Kansas City game. A few more questions popping in from Justin here. Just type in Justin May the Rapper. Will do. So everyone check out Justin May the Rapper on YouTube. He's got some Detroit Lions songs, and it looks like he has given us permission to use all of his rap songs. That's awesome, man. I appreciate it. We'd love to have some cool songs playing in the background. We haven't done it yet, but we're going to soon. So I appreciate that. And it looks like he also said we could use it for intro songs or whatever. Awesome, man. So everyone get over to YouTube and check that out after the show. Don't leave us just yet. So let's see. Some more individual reports that I wanted to put together tonight. I want to try to pull this one up on James Houston. Because James Houston is a dog. I mean, this guy just does it. You can't keep this guy off the field. And I realized that last season he was primarily a third down, or pass rushing specialist. And he kind of got knocked for it. But I don't care who you are. You step into the NFL and you get 8 sacks in 7 games. You get 8 sacks in 7 games. That's not easy to do. I don't care who you are. And he did it a lot of the time, as a solo attacker. A lot of times there wasn't, a lot of bodies around him when he was making the sack or making the tackle. And for that reason, Houston is, in my opinion, an elite pass rusher. He does it on his own. Yes, I always talk about the Hive defense and how the entire defense needs to work together. And that does happen. And it does create a lot of production when the entire defense is working together. Other guys benefit. But there's a lot of times last season where you had a lot of individuality going on where players weren't working together for whatever reason, whether they were taken out of the play, whether they were double teamed, whether they were singled and chipped. It just takes players out of the play. Houston was able to beat, chip blocks, and he's gotten through plenty of double teams. And he's able to get to the quarterback a lot easier than most edge defenders. And the biggest reason why is his bend. This guy can bend like nobody I've seen. He gets super low, and once he gets below the hands and the hip kind of level on an offensive tackle, good night, game over. You're not going to be able to stop him unless you commit a penalty. And that's what happened early in the Panthers game. He busted through on a third down pass play. He was tackled by the lineman. He would have sacked Dalton with ease on that play, and the lineman recognized it, and he just tackled him. Hey, we'll take the penalty. No problem. But it just shows, another way that this guy creates plays and production. He's creating penalties for the offense. He's creating opportunities for the guys on the line. And, it just shows too that how offenses are a little bit worried about him, and they're having to commit penalties just to keep him out of the backfield and not sacking their quarterback. So I think that speaks volumes, to James Houston's ability. But I think this speaks even higher of James Houston. He had 8 pressures on 29 attempts. Houston had 8 pressures and a sack on 29 attempts through the first 2 preseason games. And he managed to add to that this week, against the Panthers. He combined for a sack with Romeo Okwara on Bryce Young and then split another one in the fourth quarter. So the guy's just a baller. And, I don't know why people were saying he was on the bubble or is on the bubble. And I guess he could be on the bubble. I haven't checked, the latest reports on cuts today. For all I know, he could have been cut in the last 3 hours that I haven't looked. But I just don't see, where that is even a thought in somebody's mind with, the way he's able to produce on the field. So let us know what you guys think about James Houston in the comments. And, is he somebody that you want to see turn into, more of an every down edge rusher? Or are you fine with the way that he's been able to produce as a pass rushing specialist? Another individual player, wanted to address was Jack Campbell. Jack Campbell, he played in an every down role for the Lions defense for the first 2 drives, while Malcolm Rodriguez kind of rotated in and out, the sub packages. And this was a positive sign, that Jack was making his way up the depth chart, heading into week 1, towards, against Kansas City. It may not be long before he's playing a significant role for the Lions defense. He did finish with 3 total tackles on 14 snaps and was targeted once in coverage that the Panthers were able to complete for a 7-yard gain. But that didn't move the chains. Jack has been a stud this preseason. He's done the work. He's gotten a lot of snaps and a lot of work, and I think that was the right thing to do by Dan Campbell, was to make sure that his young leader and up and coming greened out of the defense is getting the work that he needs. My question to you though is, do you feel comfortable with Jack Campbell starting week 1 against Kansas City and making the calls? My answer is no. I don't feel comfortable. This is a big game. Win or lose, it's not going to derail the season. Win, I think the Lions don't stop winning if they win this game. I think they go on a tear. I think that if they beat the Super Bowl champs in week 1 to open up the season, they're not going to stop winning. I think that'll be enough energy to carry them through at least until the bye week. There's going to be some tough games. This is one of, if not the toughest game on the schedule. And for me, I feel like you want to have an Alex Anzalone who knows this defense, who's led this defense, who had the best season he's had in all of his seasons last season. I think you want him leading your defense for this one. And it's not to say that Jack can't get in there and make some calls and do what's asked of him, but I think I'd rather go with a veteran on this play here and making sure that the defensive calls are right. Let's see, we got some more chat questions coming in. All right. Justin May says, I'll be at the game against the Seahawks at home. Hopefully we will win so we can break the curse so I can walk out of Ford Field with a W. There you go. I think the curse is over. If you're speaking about, the curse of Lane, Bobby Lane, I think that curse is done and over with. I think, between Peyton Manning and what's his name, Jeff Daniels, I think that they were able to pull it off last season when they poured all the whiskey in the bathtub in Ford Field. That was kind of a funny show. Justin says that I'm hoping to go for a few other Lions games this year for some home games. So yeah, we'll be at opening day. We're probably going to be going to Kansas City for the first game. We're supposed to do our premiere live show on the Kansas City game on the 6th of September. and then we will always do a show after the game. So the way our schedule works for this season is after every single game, we're going to go on for about an hour and talk about the game, what happened in the game, the biggest moments of the game, and kind of preface, what the Lions need to do for the next week. So every Sunday game, Monday game, Thursday game, it doesn't matter what game, we're going to go on afterwards. There may be some, conflicting times that we can't, like if I'm in Kansas City and, I'm driving back, yeah, sure, I'll jump on. I can put my phone, where it has been in the truck and drive back and be on. That's no problem. But there may be some connection issues. So but at least want to let you guys know that after every single game, we're going to go on just like we did last season, recap the game. So, while everyone's driving home from the game, they got something to listen to. For people that watched it and take an interest in, what's going on, and we'll break everything down. One of the last guys, and I've got about 4 or 5 more guys to go through, but, one of the next guys that had an amazing game was Stephen Gilmore. Gilmore really stepped up Friday night. When they needed to play, he made it happen. He produced. He finished to 5 tackles, defensed 4 passes, and had a pick 6. That's a killer game. I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. I think this guy's got a lock on the roster now, and I think he's going to be a hell of a rotational player. He might have edged out Starling Thomas if there was any doubt to Thomas making the roster. He might have done it on Friday night. A few key plays for Gilmore really emphasized his awareness. His reactionary speed, his understanding of the scheme, and his progression as a capable backup were all on display. His stock is definitely on the rise, and like I said earlier, I think if the Lions don't retain this guy, he's going to get picked up. And I think he's going to get picked up immediately. 1, for what he was able to do this preseason, and 2, because his bloodline has elite NFL traits. He read the quick out on Shi Smith and lowered the boomstick or hit stick, whatever you want to call it, right? Whatever phrase you prefer. But this is exactly what you're looking out of a young DB. He then utilized his awareness again when he picked off Dalton, returning it for a TD. The way that he was able to recognize the play, react to the play, sink his hips, dig his feet, and break on the ball the way that he did, or break on the receiver the way that he did, to either make the tackle, lower the boom, pick it off, whatever he was doing that night, which he did at all 3. His reactionary time was unquestionably fast. His processing time was very fast. The only downside, to doing the hit stick or the boom stick where it's just a shoulder and a chest bump kind of hit is what he did, is he didn't wrap up the offensive player. And in my opinion, when you're using a shoulder or body hit versus wrapping somebody up and driving through the receiver into the ground, is if you don't wrap up Christian Watson or DJ Moore or Justin Jefferson, that play goes for a TD or, it's a long play. So I like to see the guys always practice, performance tackling and hit the guy square. I don't like the shoulder tackles. I never have. I've seen too many times where the Lions get beat because of a shoulder tackle. Next guy on the list, who actually had a pretty decent game, was Teddy B. It was good to see him, have a much better game, at least from a stats perspective. Again, he's in with an offensive line that is very suspect. And I took Matt Nelson off of my roster list just because I'm sick of watching the guy, leave giant holes for the defense to get in and providing constant pressure on the quarterbacks. He's done it in every single game that he's played for the Lions. And, I know he has history and I know he has ability, but for whatever reason, he allows, a few big plays every single game. And those plays can change the entire game. And look, I know he's not going to be able to stop everyone, but these big plays got to stop because they just come time and time again. But Teddy finished 13 of 22, 178 yards. He had 1 TD, no interceptions, no sacks, or major blunders. Finished with a 100 passer rating. So pretty good night. You can tell he's still learning though, and he has a lot to work on with the receiver's timing. But that pass to Green, like I said earlier, is one of the best passes I've seen all preseason. There was 4 guys in the immediate area within 5 yards of Green. There was a couple within 2 or 3 yards of Green. And when he threw that ball, it did not look like it was going anywhere near where Green was going to be. And it was great timing. It was perfectly timed. And Green ran the perfect route. And that's what matters. You know, when your quarterback knows where you're going, they know where to throw the ball. As long as the receiver runs the right route, one of 2 things are going to happen. The receiver gets there first, or a defender is going to get in the way. But if the receiver runs a perfect route and the quarterback knows what you're running and throws the ball, it's all timing. They throw those with or without a receiver in the game or in practice all day long, whether they're throwing at dummies or baskets or buckets or whatever. It's just they work on their timing that way. The next guy, Drummond, Dylan Drummond. Heck of a game again. 5 receptions on 6 targets, 56 yards. So a little over 10 a clip on each reception. He had a quietly productive night, right? He made a hell of a diving catch for the first down early in the game. And that really showed, his grit and his tenacity, and he's willing to put his body out there to make a play when needed, and he's done it a few times through the preseason. But he was quietly productive. It was nothing glaring that made you look at Drummond, any differently than he's been Mr. Consistent throughout this preseason. For that reason, I think he's got a really good shot at making this roster. I don't think he has a shot over Green, but I do believe that the Lions are going to have to keep an extra receiver. And we'll see if that remains true here in a couple of days. Chase Cota, 3 receptions. He was the most targeted receiver on Friday night, eight targets. He again had a, quasi-productive evening, averaging 14 yards a catch, so that's pretty damn good. He seemed to be held on a short pass, which ended the drive around 2 minutes, 33 seconds of the second quarter. There was no flag and, on the play, and he just kind of looked at everybody like, hey, what's up? He's got to argue for it. You got to throw a little song and dance at the refs to get him to call it. But, it's preseason too, and they probably just want to move the game along. The one glaring moment is when he had that drop in the end zone. And I think that kind of dropped him down a couple of rungs on the, making the roster list, because that ball hit him in his hands. And when it hits you in the hands, you got to catch it. It almost looked like he didn't expect the ball, like he didn't know the ball was coming. And the analogy or the reasoning I kind of gave Andy when we talked about the game, or a little bit about the game after the game was, if when he was crossing into the end zone, he kind of got sandwiched between a couple of defenders and a couple of offensive players. It almost looked like a pick play, an illegal pick play, but it wasn't called. And he kind of got squeezed through and bumped around, and next thing you know, the ball was there. So I think maybe in Coda's mind, he was thinking that he was too heavily guarded, or there was too much action going on around him, that the ball wasn't coming his way, because he looked surprised. Maybe not, just my observation. But I don't know how else you don't catch that ball unless you weren't expecting it. So those are the plays that are going to separate the good from the great. We know this. It's no surprise here. It's nothing new. You got to catch those balls. Man. Chase Cota. Hell of a season. I don't know if he's going to make the roster now. We'll see. Antoine Green is the last guy I was going to cover tonight. So Antoine Green, 3 receptions for 97 yards on 4 targets. That's a very productive night. Of course, he had the one long, reception for 70 yards. He ran, he finally showed up big, in a big way. I feel that, Green's definitely secured his spot on the roster with the play versus the Panthers. Early in the third quarter, like I said, he made a nice adjustment on a stop route that, kind of turned into a back shoulder fade for 12 yards. I felt it was a very poor pass by Sudfeld. But Green made a, nifty little shifty move to get back to the ball and secure the catch. So it really showed his versatility in being able to adjust. And with about 45 seconds left in the second quarter, that's when Teddy hit him for one of the nicest throws I've seen all season. Green ran a 6 route up and across the middle, and Teddy hit him in stride for a 70-yard TD. That's really all I had for tonight, other than let's get into some roster projections. Give me just a second. I got to pull it up here. All right. Is anybody still with me here? Let's get some of your guys' ideas. What are your projections? What are we keeping for the quarterbacks? So you got 4. You got Goff, Sudfeld, Teddy B, and Adrian Martinez. And then our 5th one, Hendon Hooker, who we know is going to be on the NFI list. You're going to keep 3 because the 3rd one doesn't count on the final 53. We're going to keep 2. What's everybody thinking? I can tell you what I'm thinking. Give me 1 second here. Here's my thoughts. I think that the Lions are going to keep 2, but they're also going to have 2 more. What do I mean by that? It makes no sense, does it? They're going to keep Jared and Teddy, of course, right? But I also think that Adrian Martinez jumps Sudfeld, which is the exact opposite of what I've said all season long, or all preseason long anyway. And the reason why I think this shift happens is because Sudfeld just got injured, and I don't have any clue on his injury. I haven't read anything. I haven't seen any updates. Because it was a Friday night game, there probably won't be any updates until Monday morning. But it is cut time, so I would not expect too much out of Dan Campbell. The 3rd guy doesn't count. Why wouldn't you keep him? They need a mobile QB in practice. Teddy, yeah, he used to be mobile. I don't know how mobile he is anymore. Adrian's got very young, fresh legs, and he can give us more of that, dual threat quarterback look, on the look team. Hendon Hooker's not going to count on the roster. So, of course, they're going to keep Hendon Hooker around. He's going to be NFI'd. And he can stay there until, he's ready to come back. And then I think that they would bounce Adrian down to the practice squad. So, Lions keep 2, Jared Goff and Teddy Bridgewater. Hendon Hooker's NFI'd. Adrian Martinez sneaks in because the Lions can keep 3 without accounting towards the roster. And what I mean by the roster is the game day roster. So it doesn't count on that day. Adrian, I think, would have to be relegated to the practice squad. But they keep 2 for sure. I probably should have made that designation in my article that Adrian would be practice squad, but I didn't. So I might have to go and fix that. Running backs. I think it's pretty simple. You got David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Craig Reynolds. I don't think that they spring for a 4th. I do think that they'll be looking, when cuts happen. And, none of the other options make sense, here, for me to keep, that the Lions had. Obviously, Zigbo, he's been around in the league, really doesn't do much. Benny Snell, another one, doesn't really excite me in any which way, shape, or form. I'd rather keep Kabinda over both of those guys, but Kabinda doesn't excite me either. And I really think that the Lions will be active come waiver wire to try to find a 4th option. But it's hard to filter, when you consider you've got better options at keeping a Starling Thomas or a Chase Cota, over a Jamar Jefferson, which I think Jamar got hurt in the game, or over a Kabinda, right? I mean, who would you keep? Would you rather have an extra defender, or would you rather have a 4th running back who's probably never going to see the game? Unless 2 guys get hurt. Wide receivers. I think the Lions go from 5 to 6 this season. Last season they kept 5. I think this season they keep 6. They could even keep a 7th, just because, Cota and Drummond are probably guys that you don't want to lose. So I've got St. Brown in a, top dog. Got Jones, Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, Khalif Raymond, Antoine Green. Those are going to round out the top 5. Williams is suspended, so he won't count. And I went with Chase Cota over Dylan Drummond. did this because I wanted to be different than what everybody else is probably going to write. But that's where I'm thinking the Lions might also keep 7 wide receivers, which is unheard of on a roster. But at the same time, the question's always going to be asked, do you have a 7th receiver that just makes much more sense than, a 10th DB or a 10th or a 9th offensive lineman? And do you want to take the chance of losing these guys come, waiver wire time? More I thought about the game, I think Dylan Drummond probably does have a better chance of making the roster over Coda if the Lions don't keep a 7th. But I went with 6. St. Brown, Marvin Jones, Josh Reynolds, Cleve Raymond, Antoine Green, Chase Coda. Williams is suspended. Tight ends, again, another simple one. Laporta, Wright, and Mitchell. And they already cut Helm, I believe, yesterday. So we already know that the Lions are going to stick with 3. This could be an area that they're looking to upgrade here in free agency. Mitchell's been doing well. He was a draft pick from last season that came off an ACL, I believe, and he's been doing well. I don't know. Unless somebody gets hurt, you really only need 3 tight ends. Very infrequently do you see the Lions in a 3 tight end set, but they do exist. So we'll see. Again, keeping 4 tight ends. My take on this was Helm just didn't make sense over a 6th receiver or a 10th lineman. And, like I said, Helm's gone already. Offensive line. This is a tough one. Not the starters, but, the bottom guys just, I felt like they were all terrible. And, we've seen Nelson's play. Awasika hasn't done anything. Alfetti, even though he's a veteran in this league, he's just, doesn't do much. If anything, he's been more of a liability, and letting too much pressure get back, to the quarterback. Commits a lot of penalties. We've already seen him have a few penalties this preseason, and he's known for that. So I really had a tough time with the O-line. The Lions usually keep 9, but with a lack of competent backups, and maybe they're going to keep an extra one until the waiver wire frees somebody up and gives them a better option at right tackle and an interior guard position. So I went with Penei Sewell, of course, Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, Vaitai, Frank Ragnow, Glasgow as your primary starters. Then I've got Jermaine Alfetti, Brad Cecil, which I only put him in there because he's got the ability to play center, and we need somebody to be able to back up Ragnow if he goes down, and you just don't know what's going to happen with Vaitai. And so if Vaitai goes down, Glasgow's going to get more of the starts at that position. That's why the Lions brought him in. But if Ragnow and Vaitai go down, who's going to step in at center? So they need somebody, which Cecil has the experience at playing center. Sorsdahl is more of a tackle. I did keep Sorsdahl, who was a draft pick this year. I think it was 5th round. And then Awasika rounded out my old lineman. D-line. Not real difficult with this one. You Lions keep 5. Hopefully Bugs isn't banged up too bad, after the injury that he had on Friday night. But I kept Isaiah Bugs, Ali McNeil, Broderick Martin, Levi Onwuzurike, and Benito Jones. For the edge, of course, you've got Aiden Hutchinson, who I'm really expecting to have a bounce-back season and elevating his game to the next level. John Kaminsky, who's just been absolutely phenomenal all preseason long. Charles Harris, from what we've read and from what we've heard from Dan Campbell, has really stepped up his game. And Josh Pascal, who's kind of been the quiet night of the season, really isn't getting a lot of attention, but, you do hear some good things coming out of the press. And Romeo Okwara. We shit-canned Julian. I felt like that was going to be the surprise cut as one of the Okwara brothers. I mean, they're both on their last legs with contracts, so it's whoever they feel better with that, is going to be able to produce at a higher level. And I went with Romeo. Linebackers, I think that they keep 6 this season. Last year, I believe they only kept 5. But you've got Anzalone, Rodriguez, Campbell, Barnes, Houston, and Maben that rounds out my linebacker roster. I went with 6 because, these guys are too good. You're obviously not going to let Anselo and Rodriguez, Campbell, or Barnes go, or Houston. And Houston can, play, edge and linebacker. They've got these hybrid roles. They're your outside linebackers, your Sams and your Will linebacker. They're basically outside, pass rushers. But Jalen Reeves may have been, he's always been Mr. Consistent. So I feel like he sticks around. Again, that's that same question. Do you have a sixth linebacker that's better than, a 10th quarterback or, your sixth edge rusher if you're going to keep one? Cornerback. So here's what I did with the DBs. I got a cornerback line, DB line, and a safety line. And the reason why I did that this season was because you've got two players that are really DBs. They can play both sides. Or they can play both positions, safety and cornerback. So for cornerback 1 and 2, I've got Cameron Sutton, Jerry Jacobs, Starling Thomas, Stephen Gilmore, Chase Lucas. Mosley's going to be on reserve pup, so he's not going to count. Now, when he comes back, the Lions are going to have to make room. So Lucas being shoved down to the practice squad, I felt would be more likely. But that backfield with Sutton, Jacobs, Thomas, and Gilmore, I think is going to be pretty stacked. And then, of course, in the DB section, I've got C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Brian Branch because they're both able to play nickel and safety. I'm confident that Gardner, Brian Branch could play either or all spots if needed. Safeties, I got the Lions only keeping 3 this season. We had Savion Smith and Ifeatu Melifonwu. They both got injured in the last week's game. I think that hurts their stock. And without knowing how significant the injuries are, I kept Savion Smith over Ifeatu Melifonwu, but I don't know if anything's changed. And I'm really not cracked up on Brady Breeze. He's just really hasn't done a whole lot since he's been with the Lions. So you've got Kirby Joseph, you've got Walker and Smith. And that rounded out my safeties. And, of course, special teams. It was no surprise. Jack Fox, Patterson, and Daly. So tell me your thoughts. Leave us some comments down in the chat section or wherever you're watching from. Let us know what you think about the roster. Please visit our blog site at rockdownpodcastnetwork.com. You can find all of our socials in our link tree that is in the bio to this show. It's also on the YouTube bios. You can visit any of our pages like Rockdown Detroit Lions on Facebook or Rockdown Podcast Network on Facebook. You can also visit our Detroit Lions private group called the Detroit Lions group. So hit them all up. Join us. Stay along for the season. We're going to be doing some Turned Up Tailgates episodes here pretty soon. We've got an interview coming up with Billy Sims in the next few weeks. And we're going to get some more players and former players scheduled so that y'all can tune in and ask them your questions. And pretty soon we're going to have the call-in feature activated, so you guys are going to be able to call in and let us know what's going on. If you'd like to join the show, please send us an email at info@rockdownpodcastnetwork.com and let us know that you'd like to come on any one of our shows. We're looking for guests. You can come on for the entire show. You can come on for bits and pieces of the show. And like I said, we're going to have the call-in feature activated here pretty soon. So that's all we had for tonight on Rockdown Detroit Lions Off the Cuff episode. And we'll see y'all next time. Y'all have a good night. Take care. One pride. Go Lions.
So, we look like we're ready. But this is day one. It's about the work. And I've said that from day one, and it'll always be the same message. It's about work. You got to go earn your right every year. It doesn't matter what the players are, the coaches, expectations, where you were, where you're going. We got to work, man.
Wants to throw it to Stewart. He caught it. He's still on the first down. Oh, yes. The big man dives down to the 31-yard line. Oh, that is beautiful.
Let me tell you something. I love this team now. I got goosebumps, gentlemen. I love this team.
Fields looking, pressured, hit from behind, taken down. Aiden Hutchinson got him.
What do you think about the secondary?
Just look at the name, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You brought in, you drafted Branch.
It started off with that huge hit on Beasley.
McCollum bends out. There's a big hit right away. And boom!
Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff dropped it in the bucket that time.
We're in our window now to win.
Aaron Rodgers exits the NFC North as a loser.